Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons. I'm your host, Kerry Parker. Today we have episode 435 for June 30th, 2025. We've got a big news show for you today. I tried to pare it back, and I kind of failed. There's a lot to get through today. Now, we do have some good stories today, too. And some of these stories are really short, so hopefully we can still get this into a little over an hour today. Hacker Summer Camp is just on the horizon. That is DEF CON and Black Hat and B-Sides Las Vegas. That is fast approaching, just a little over a month away. And I will be going for the entire week. I'm very much looking forward to that, as usual. And then I've got a little bit more news, some fun news to share about that, which I'll get into after the news. So let's do a quick rundown. We're going to talk about 23andMe and what's going on with the data that they have, the DNA data that they have on their customers. Meta is rolling out AI into its app and, as usual, is a privacy disaster. Amazon and Roku have struck a deal to pool their connected TV audiences together for advertising purposes. WhatsApp is starting to include ads in their app, which is something that Mark Zuckerberg swore he would never do. The Markup has a really scary story about how many health data portals have been collecting a lot of your personal data and sharing it with Facebook, Google, and other data brokers. The Austrian government believes that it is now going to start monitoring your secure messaging. The U.S. is now requiring visa applicants, particularly student visa applicants, to make all of their social media stuff public. Scattered Spider is a hacker group that is doing some pretty scary stuff right now. They keep kind of rotating through different sectors of industry, and right now they are focused on insurance. But then we have some good stories too. The Vermont governor has just signed a very interesting bill about protecting kids online. Flock has actually removed some states from its national lookup tool after the 404 Media published their investigation, which we talked about on an earlier show. Those of you still using Windows 10 are running out of time, but Microsoft did give you a not too expensive way to give yourself at least one more year's worth of security upgrades. Android 16, which just came out recently, has some really great security protections built in. And Denmark has a very interesting proposal for trying to handle deepfakes. And then finally, a couple quick notes about how to get a cleaner set of Google search results if you're still using that. And if you're a ChatGPT user, an interesting prompt that will tell you a lot about you. And then finally, my tip of the week, where I talk about the mobile browsing experience and why you might not be getting all the browser protections that you should be getting. So lots to talk about. Let's get to it. All right, first up, this is from The Record, and it's an update on the 23andMe DNA analyzing ancestry service. As we've talked about before, they were recently bought out of bankruptcy by another company, and we've all been concerned about what's going to happen with your user data. And so here's an update about what they're planning to do. The Consumer Privacy Ombudsman, overseeing how genomics company 23andMe's bankruptcy sale will impact consumer privacy, on Wednesday said that customers should be allowed to give their separate and affirmative consent before their data is sold. The sale of millions of consumers' genetic data without such consent may be in conflict with 23andMe's privacy policy and public statements, Ombudsman Neil Richards said in a court filing. Richards' recommendations to the bankruptcy judge overseeing the sale is partially based on messages from 23andMe customers who told him they are worried about their genetic data's inclusion in the sale, the filing said. Many shared the difficulties experienced while trying to delete their own account, as well as the accounts of deceased relatives, according to the filing. Customer data is by far 23andMe's most valuable asset. At a tense Tuesday congressional hearing, 23andMe interim CEO Joe Selsavage would not commit to allowing customers to give opt-in consent for their data to be sold, despite being pressed on the matter several times by multiple lawmakers. Millions of 23andMe customers have not logged into their account at all since the company updated its privacy statement to include the word bankruptcy in June of 2022, Richard said, citing information provided by the company. Many customers therefore do not understand that the company at that point amended its policy to, quote, expressly note the potential for a sale of customer data in bankruptcy, unquote, the filing said. The company's privacy policy has been revised many times, Richard said, noting that the Frequent representations and promises 23andMe made about privacy publicly were, for the most part, quote, far more visible and thus likely to be understood by consumers than technical language about change and control deep in the privacy statement, unquote. Data deletion requests spiked after a massive 2023 hack of 23andMe's vast trove of data, Richard said, and again when the company declared bankruptcy in March. Nearly 2 million of 15 million people whose genetic data 23andMe holds have requested deletion of their data since the bankruptcy filing, Celsavage told Congress on Tuesday. I'm actually surprised and a little bit sad that it wasn't more than that, but anyway, back to the article. Richard's position that consumers should be allowed to give affirmative consent for the sale of their data echoes comments made at the Tuesday congressional oversight hearing. And this is a quote from Representative Ayanna Pressley, who said, quote, "You claimed that 23andMe is all about consumer empowerment, but most people ended up actually exploited, not knowing that they signed up to have their genetic data auctioned off for the highest bidder," unquote. Pressley said that notice to consumers is not good enough without their consent to the sale. And I got another quote from Pressley, quote, "People trusted you with their more personal information. Show them you respect them. We're talking about names, birth dates, genetic lineages, literal DNA data that implicates entire families, not just the person who gave the sample," unquote. Richard's report similarly underscored the sensitivity of the data being peddled at the bankruptcy auction. Again, a quote from Richard's quote, "It would not be hyperbole to conclude that this is one of the most, if not the most, sensitive collections of data about identified people ever sought to be discharged in bankruptcy," unquote. If the court does not require 23andMe to obtain separate and affirmative consent from consumers for their data to be sold, another option would be to require the winning bidder, two are vying to acquire the firm, to obtain such consent before using the data, Richard said. So that's all from that article. I think there was one country, Regeneron or somebody, who was doing it, but then at the last minute, somebody else came in too, which is why I think there's two firms vying to acquire it. So it's still in process, basically. So again, if you or somebody you know, particularly somebody in your family, has used 23andMe, I would still immediately try to delete your data and keep records of you requesting that be done. I'll put this link in the show notes, but the EFF does have an article on how to delete your data, and that's a good reference. So anyway, look at the show notes for that article, or just go to the EFF and search on 23andMe. All right, next up, this is from TechCrunch, and it's about Meta AI being a privacy disaster. It sounds like the start of a 21st century horror film. Your browser history has been public all along, and you had no idea. That's basically what it feels like right now on the new standalone Meta AI app, where swaths of people are publishing their ostensibly private conversations with the chatbot. When you ask the AI a question, you have the option of hitting a share button, which then directs you to a screen showing a preview of the post, which you can then publish. But some users appear blissfully unaware that they are sharing these text conversations, audio clips, and images publicly with the world. When I woke up this morning, I did not expect to hear an audio recording of a man in a southern accent asking, "Hey Meta, why do some farts stink more than other farts?" Flatulence-related inquiries are the least of Meta's problems. On the Meta AI app, I have seen people ask for help with tax evasion, if their family members would be arrested for their proximity to white-collar crimes, or how to write a character reference letter for an employee facing legal troubles, with that person's first and last name included. Others, like security expert Rachel Toback, found examples of people's home addresses and sensitive court details, among other private information. Whether you admit to committing a crime or having a weird rash, this is a privacy nightmare. Meta does not indicate to users what their privacy settings are as they post, or where they are even posting to. So if you log into Meta AI with Instagram and your Instagram account is public, then so too are your searches about how to meet big booty women. Much of this could have been avoided if Meta didn't ship an app with the bonkers idea that people would want to see each other's conversations with Meta AI, or if anyone at Meta could have foreseen that this kind of feature would be problematic. According to App Figures, an app intelligence firm, the Meta AI app has only been downloaded 6.5 million times since it debuted on April 29th. That might be impressive for an indie app, but we aren't talking about a first-time developer making a niche game. This is one of the world's wealthiest companies sharing an app with technology that it's invested billions of dollars into. As each second passes, these seemingly innocuous queries on the Meta AI app inch closer to a viral mess. In a matter of hours, more and more posts have appeared on the app that indicate clear trolling, like someone sharing their resume and asking for a cybersecurity job, or an account with a Peppy the Frog avatar asking how to make a water bottle bong. If Meta wanted to get people to actually use its Meta AI app, then public embarrassment is certainly one way of getting attention. I don't know what to add to that, but Meta's got an AI app that's apparently a dedicated AI app, and if you use it wrong, whatever you're typing into this AI could be made completely public. How is it, after all of these years, Facebook has not figured out how to do anything private, does not understand the implications of sharing these sorts of things publicly? I don't get it. I am just flabbergasted. All right, next up, a quick one here from Variety, which is not a source that I usually quote. It's about Amazon and Roku getting together for advertising. Amazon and Roku think they can sell more digital ads if they team up to do it. The two streaming giants, which control the Amazon Fire broadband interface and the streaming Roku channel, respectively, will pool their addressable audiences via Amazon's demand-side platform, creating a way for marketers to build up impressions tied to Amazon's Prime Video, Roku channel, and other streaming services available on Roku and Fire TV operating systems. The alliance aims to, quote, enable seamless access to logged-in users across major streaming apps, unquote, says Kelly McLean, a vice president at Amazon's ad unit who oversees sales tied to its Amazon DSP, or delivery service partner, during an interview. The companies say early tests of the technology show advertising reaching 40% more unique viewers while cutting back the frequency of a specific ad running in front of the same user by nearly 30%. Roku and Amazon estimate their partnerships will make available a pool of 80 million connected TV households in the U.S. Roku works with other demand-side platforms, including those operated by The Trade Desk, Yahoo, and Google, against which Amazon's DSP competes. The partnership will give rise to, quote, a better experience for marketers, consumers, and programmers who are on our platforms. It means more relevant ads, better frequency management from a consumer perspective, more addressability and measurement on our programmer partners, unquote. And that was from Jay Askanasi, Roku VP. The integration utilizes technology that allows Amazon's DSP to recognize logged-in viewers across the Roku operating system and devices in the U.S. Advertisers using the service will be able to target audiences more precisely. The new service will be available in the U.S. to all advertisers that use Amazon DSP by the fourth quarter of 2025. All right, so my first take on that is ick. I'm just so sick and tired of being tracked mercilessly by all these services, and knowing that a lot of these services are making money on these things, and in some cases being loss leaders. I mean, Amazon and Roku both actually make hardware. Well, I'm sure they're actually OEMing somebody else's hardware, but Fire TVs, Roku TVs, all have this tracking stuff all built into them. So I'll say it again. If you have a smart TV, I would never, ever connect it to the internet. Do not hook it up to Wi-Fi. And you don't need to worry about updating the software if you never hook it up to the internet. I would use a third-party streaming box instead to access things like, Netflix or even Amazon Prime. And personally, I like the Apple TV box because Apple, of all of them, is least likely, in my view, to be surreptitiously gathering your data. But again, this article just goes to show, and the reason I'm reading this to you, is that these guys are out there trying to get as much data on you as possible and teaming up to fill your eyeballs with their ads based on the data they collect about you. And they are increasingly sharing that data amongst themselves. All right, next up, this is from 9to5Mac. And surprise, surprise, WhatsApp is now launching ads for all users. Today, Meta announced via the official WhatsApp blog that ads are rolling out to all users now. Ads are launching as part of the Updates tab inside the app. This means they won't be part of your private chats, at least for now. Instead, you'll see ads integrated with stories like status features as well as the channels list. Essentially, if you've used Instagram stories and seen ads there, the experience will now be very similar inside WhatsApp's status feature. And in the channels list, sponsored channels will now appear. WhatsApp says it has built the ad feature, quote, in the most private way possible, unquote. That's a big claim. Diving into the details, though, there are several pieces of personal data WhatsApp will use to show you ads. Per their own blog post, in-app advertising will be informed by your country or city, language, the channels you're following, and how you interact with the ads you see. Additionally, if you've added WhatsApp to Accounts Center, your ad preferences from other Meta platforms will be used to inform what ads you see in WhatsApp. For now, these two types of ads are the only ones launching today in WhatsApp, but now that ads are finally part of the messaging app, I'll be especially curious to see how they might evolve into the future. So, this was always going to happen despite Mark Zuckerberg promising regulators that Facebook would not monetize WhatsApp with ads when they bought the company in 2014 for about $22 billion. We all saw this coming. We knew this was going to happen, and the regulator should have known this too. So yeah, now it's finally happening, and it's just going to get worse. Now, WhatsApp, the actual technical underpinnings of the app, uses the same protocol that Signal does. So the actual communications themselves are pretty darn secure. The problem is the owner of the app is Facebook, and Facebook is an advertising company. So even though it is well and truly end-to-end encrypted, Facebook controls the ends. It owns the app, so it can see everything you're sending. It may not be storing that on their servers, but the app itself can look at everything that you send and receive, at least on the device that's running it. So again, if you really want a secure messaging app, just get Signal. Apple's Messages is pretty good. It's also end-to-end encrypted, but if you want something that will work on all platforms, Signal really is still the gold standard. So if you've got any friends or family that's on the fence, or think you might be able to convince them to go to Signal, this might give you another good bit of ammo in that argument. All right, next up, this is a really disturbing story from the Markup. These guys have done some good reporting on this, and it's about data trackers on health data portals. In April, the Markup and CalMatters found that Covered California, the state of California's healthcare exchange, was sending the personal health information of its users to LinkedIn. The news triggered a class action lawsuit and questions from federal lawmakers. In June, a Markup investigation further revealed that exchanges maintained by 4 other states have also leaked visitors' sensitive health data. Readers have asked, is there anything I can do to stop my information from being leaked this way? The answer is yes. The trackers we found on health exchanges are extremely common and are used by the world's most popular websites. We found them on websites people use to prepare for college, to do their taxes, get a mortgage, or report a mental health crisis. Good news is you can block many, if not all, of these trackers with just a few steps. The owners of the health exchange websites use services provided by tech companies like LinkedIn, Google, and Snapchat to track user activity and to target advertising. To make this possible, website owners install and configure code provided by the tech companies on their pages. This code is called a tracker. When you load a page, the tracker code runs, collecting data and sending it to the tech company's servers. This data can be anything from a profile of the device and the browser you're using to every word you type into a form. The tracker can also read and write cookies, which can follow you across multiple websites. Because the data is being collected and sent by your browser, you can exercise some control over it. Here are the options we've tested that have successfully blocked the trackers. And these should all sound familiar because these are all things that I've been preaching for a long time. Okay, first, change your settings to block more trackers. Some browsers block many trackers by default and are capable of blocking more. If you're using Safari, that's Apple's browser, using advanced tracking and fingerprint protection will block the trackers we found. In the desktop version of Firefox, upgrading your enhanced tracking protection level from standard to strict will do the trick. In Chrome and other browsers, blocking third-party cookies won't stop the trackers from sending your data, but it will make it harder to link that data to you. All right, second, install a privacy-protecting browser extension. If you're using a desktop browser, one straightforward solution is to install a privacy-protecting browser extension. We tested Privacy Badger and uBlock Origin Lite, and Lite is the one that you need to use on any Chrome-based browser because they've basically neutered the real version of uBlock Origin, but uBlock Origin itself, not the Lite version, is available on other browsers like Firefox. Anyway, Privacy Badger and uBlock Origin, or uBlock Origin Lite, and confirmed that they both block the trackers from LinkedIn, Snapchat, and Google that we examined in our stories. And finally, 3, switch to a new browser. Chrome and Safari, the browsers most people use, don't stop all the trackers we found from sharing your data out of the box. If you don't want to change your settings as suggested above, installing a new privacy-focused browser is what we recommend. In our tests, the Brave and DuckDuckGo browsers blocked the trackers we profiled. And for mobile, I will also throw out Firefox Focus. It's a more privacy out-of-the-box version of the regular Firefox browser. Okay, so my take on this real quick. The problem here is all these trackers that are built into most websites. Most of these come from third-party libraries and software development kits. The website owners are often blissfully ignorant of their inclusion, which I don't believe should be a legal defense because they should know. But a lot of these packages come with these analytics packages that these sites want. Like they want to know how people are using their site, and instead of reinventing the wheel, they go to someplace who's done this for a living. Now, it turns out, however, that all these analytics sites also collect a lot of information about you as you're browsing the site, including potentially all of these things sensitive health things you're filling in on these forms. So I think it's absolutely horrible that they are using these things, but I also would probably guess that a lot of the developers of these healthcare portals are not that savvy and potentially don't know what they're doing. And so it's good that these things are being brought up by reporting like this, and as they reach out to them, some of them have figured out that they need to turn these things off and have done so. Now, all that said, you're going to want to hang around for my tip of the week, because if you think your mobile browser will protect you, you may be surprised to find out that it might be getting circumvented. All right, next, this is from FedScoop. Unfortunately, it's similar to some other articles we've had recently about how your data is being used by law enforcement in the United States in ways that you probably didn't realize were happening. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. So let me read this article from FedScoop. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is looking to hire a company to help it mine through data sources, including social media, international trade data, blockchain information, in other words, things around cryptocurrency, property records, and the dark web, the latest example of the agency looking to beef up the tools and platforms it uses in its enforcement operations. In a government procurement posting published late last month, ICE said it was interested in deploying a service that can continuously monitor 1 million people or entities of interest and analyzing trends for the purposes of, quote, identifying potentially criminal and fraudulent behavior before crime and fraud can materialize, unquote, among other goals. In a request for information for data analytics shared by ICE's Investigations and Operations Support Office in suburban Dallas, the government component outlined a range of requirements that it might seek from a contractor, like staff support, data analytics, and access to proprietary data. The point of the contract, the agency said in the posting, is to establish a blanket purchase agreement that would allow any entity within ICE to use the service. The contractor, according to a detailed document included in the posting, is supposed to use a wide range of data, including its own, to help determine, for example, whether people or entities are, quote, violating or attempting to violate U.S. immigration and customs laws or participating in government programs through potentially fraudulent misrepresentation, unquote. The agency said agents and other ICE staffers require data analytics support for screening and vetting, developing leads for analyzing criminal activity, and conducting analysis of criminal networks and associations. ICE outlined a range of data that the contractor would work with, including business associations, court records, social media posts on platforms like X and TikTok, the dark web, international travel data, shipping information, geolocation information, including information from license plate readers, crime data, property records, supply chain information, information about cryptocurrency and blockchain, scientific research and development data, and international patent info. And this is a quote from this proposal request for information. It says, quote, the continuous monitoring and alert system to track content from the available sources for specified new data and information enhances the mission to proactively scrutinize known or suspected crime, identify and disrupt terrorist criminal enterprises, prevent exploitation of the nation's immigration system, and to expand the resource equities within the various law enforcement agencies and intelligence communities. The continuous monitoring and alert service must be able to monitor 1 million individuals or entities of interest, unquote. Some technical and privacy experts expressed concerns about the breadth of the contract, as well as the potential that the software could be used to monitor the opinions people express online. And this is a quote from Emily Tucker, who's the director of Georgetown Law's Center for Privacy and Technology. And she said, quote, We know that comprehensive surveillance of the U.S. population is a goal of this administration, and the scope of this RFI reflects that ambition. The language emphasizing the government's interest in proprietary data for a wide range of policing activities is especially concerning from the perspective of civil and human rights, unquote. And Dave Mass of the EFF noted, quote, "In the modern age, when we think about ICE, we have to recognize it's not just sworn officers anymore, but a network of private intelligence contractors who get paid to probe a vast array of data. The rhetoric of this administration raises questions about whether these services will be used to target actual fentanyl dealers and terrorists, or used to persecute people and organizations that the administration has deemed criminal because their views don't align with the MAGA agenda," unquote. And, of course, MAGA is Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. A former expert in artificial intelligence based at the White House told FedScoop that the scope of the work outlined in the request for information was staggering. They emphasized that the contractors could gain access to a vast amount of data about people without significant accountability and oversight mechanisms. Brian Hofer, the chair and executive director of Secure Justice, a nonprofit that focuses on the reduction of corporate and government overreach, told FedScoop that government buying of commercially available information is in part a way to, quote, "get around the protections provided by the Constitution, specifically the Fourth Amendment." This is just another instance where ICE is looking to contract with a company that will collect data and leverage data that the government would not necessarily be able to collect itself without some type of court order, unquote. So, yeah, I'm not sure what to add to that. I just wanted to keep you posted that this stuff is still happening, still expanding, and we need to fight back against this sort of mass data surveillance wherever we possibly can. And sounds like what we really need to do is make sure that we vote people into office that will respect our privacy. But at least these things are being exposed and we're getting some transparency about what's going on here. I also do want to call out real quick that, this article and that the request for information specifically calls out looking for behavior before a crime or fraud can materialize. And if you've never seen the movie Minority Report, you might want to check that one out. We're basically talking about pre-crime here, and that gets into some really sketchy territory and very dangerous territory. Okay, next one here's a short one here from Reuters, and it's about the Austrian government deciding that they want to monitor secure messaging. Austria's coalition government has agreed on a plan to enable police to monitor suspects' secure messaging in order to thwart militant attacks, ending what security officials have said is a rare and dangerous blind spot for a European Union country. Because Austria lacks a legal framework for monitoring messaging services like WhatsApp, its main domestic intelligence service and police rely on allies with far more sweeping powers like Britain and the United States, alerting them to chatter about planned attacks and spying. This kind of tip-off led to police unraveling what they say was a planned attack on a Taylor Swift concert in Vienna, which prompted the cancellation of all 3 of her planned shows there in August of last year. And this is a quote from Jörg Lichtfried, the junior minister in charge of overseeing the Directorate of Security and Intelligence. And this person said, quote, "The aim is to make people planning terrorist attacks in Austria feel less secure and increase everyone else's sense of security. That is why this decision by the cabinet today is an important milestone in the fight against terrorism and spying in Austria." Ironically, of course, by doing spying. That's just me. That was in the article. Under the new system, monitoring of a person's messaging must be approved by a 3-judge panel and should only apply to a limited number of cases. Interior Minister Gerhard Karner told the news conference it was only expected to be used on 25 to 30 people a year. If it is more than 30, a report must be sent to a parliamentary committee, the government said, addressing concerns about mass surveillance and the infringement of people's privacy. And a last quote here from the government says, quote, "The police must have a well-founded suspicion of a possible terror attack," unquote, to monitor a person's messaging under the new system. Once Parliament passes the legislation, a tender process for monitoring technology would be launched, and monitoring would begin in 2027. Okay, so this glosses over a lot of really important details. Like, how are they going to do this? They kind of make it sound like they could just put out a request for a proposal and say, we'll give you some money. You just need to build this system that would let you monitor these end-to-end encrypted services. Which, I mean, granted, there are some companies out there who are selling that sort of technology, but it's kind of hit or miss. And it's not clear if they're also going to somehow try to require that companies that provide these services allow privileged access by the government. The whole thing sounds a little half-baked, so we'll see what the actual impacts of this might be. But it's yet another country that has gotten together, or at least its elected representatives have gotten together and said, we can't be having this secret communications anymore. We need to be able to spy on everybody. And so the crypto wars have never really ended, and they are heating back up once again. All right, next up, this is really troubling for me. This is from the Hacker News. I saw it on multiple sites. And actually, I saw multiple articles on this. And this one talks about India, but I've also seen a similar one about Ireland. And my guess is that this is probably happening in multiple countries. So anyway, let me read this about a new U.S. visa requirement. The United States Embassy in India has announced that applicants for F, M, and J non-immigrant visas should make their social media accounts public. And just really quick, FM and J, these are student and exchange student type visas. The new guideline seeks to help officials verify the identity and eligibility of applicants under U.S. law. The U.S. Embassy said every visa application review is a quote-unquote national security decision. And this is a quote from the embassy, quote, effective immediately, all individuals applying for an FM or J non-immigrant visa are requested to adjust the privacy settings on all of their personal social media accounts to public to facilitate vetting necessary to establish their identity and admissibility to the United States, unquote. Under the new rules, Indian students and others planning to pursue academia or enroll in vocational or exchange programs are mandated to ensure that their social media profiles are set to public before submitting their visa applications. A refusal to set the accounts to public could be grounds for rejection. The embassy noted that the United States has required visa applicants to provide social media identifiers on immigrant and non-immigrant visa application forms since 2019. It also said every piece of quote-unquote available information is used as part of its visa screening and vetting to identify visa applicants who are deemed inadmissible to the country, including those who pose a threat to its national security. However, it did not spell out what these steps would look for. Similar directives have been issued by other U.S. embassies across the world, with the U.S. Embassy in Mexico stating that visa applications must list all social media usernames or handles of every platform they have used from the last 5 years. The development comes weeks after U.S. President Donald Trump's administration ordered embassies around the world to stop scheduling appointments for student visas to expand social media vetting of such applicants. Last week, the U.S. Department of State said it's resuming the process, but with new measures that require applicants to unlock their social media accounts for government review. And this is a quote, I guess, from the DOJ. Quote, the United States must be vigilant during the visa issuance process to ensure that those applying for admission to the United States do not intend to harm Americans or our national interests, and that all applicants credibly establish their eligibility for the visa sought, including that they intend to engage in activities consistent with the terms of their admission, unquote. So I'm not sure what to add to this. All I can say is this just feels wrong. I mean, I understand why they're doing it, but I don't want to go down this road because it's going to sound probably political, even though I wouldn't mean it to be, or honestly don't feel that it is. But this just feels wrong to me, even though I understand where they're, I understand the intent. But frankly, at this point, all these policy changes that we're making is going to make us a country that no one's going to want to visit and no one's going to want to come live and work in. Related to this, I saw an article saying a lot of graduating students are not doing searches about jobs in the U.S. The number of searches for jobs in the U.S. has plummeted, and searching for jobs in other countries has gone up quite a bit. So we have evidence of the chilling effect of these sorts of policies, and it's going to bite us really hard in the long run. All right, one more scary story, and then we've got a few good ones. So this one's from The Record. It's about Scattered Spider. We think I've probably mentioned tangentially with some other articles, but they're really quite talented as a hacker group. And they seem to be kind of going sector by sector in the industry. And now they are focusing their targets on the insurance industry, which is what this article is talking about. A group of hackers behind a recent string of attacks on retail stores in the UK and US has shifted its focus to insurance firms in recent days, according to cybersecurity researchers. Security analysts at Google's Threat Intelligence Group published a warning this week to insurance companies, writing that it is, quote, now aware of multiple intrusions in the U.S., which bear all the hallmarks of scattered spider activity. Given this actor's history of focusing on a sector at a time, the insurance industry should be on high alert, especially for social engineering schemes which target their help desks and call centers, unquote. And that was from John Holtquist from Google's threat group. Charles Carmichael, the chief technology officer of Mandiant, which is also owned by Google, added in comments to Recorded Future News that there is more than one U.S.-based insurance company that has been attacked, and noted that the targeting of the insurance industry began around a week and a half ago. Google declined to offer specifics about the victims, but several insurance companies have reported attacks over the last week. Erie Insurance released a statement Tuesday about a recent cybersecurity issue that it reported to regulators at the Securities and Exchange Commission last week. Although the company did not attribute the attack to a specific group, it told Recorded Future News in a statement on Tuesday that it is dealing with network outages caused by proactive measures Erie Insurance officials had to take. The company, which is a major provider of homeowner, automobile, and commercial insurance, said it now has control of its systems and has seen no evidence of ransomware. Philadelphia Insurance Companies was also hit with a cyber incident that began on June 9th. The company is now facing a network outage that has affected its phone and email systems, as well as its online applications. The company replaced its website with a notice that said they are working with law enforcement to recover from the cyber attack. Like Erie, Philadelphia Insurance Companies did not provide details about the hackers behind the incident. A major Swedish insurance firm was also allegedly attacked by cyber criminals this week who took down the company's website. Beyond Trust's Fletcher Davis said insurance companies are attractive targets for Scattered Spider because they typically handle vast amounts of sensitive customer data, including personal information, financial records, and health data, which can be targeted for data theft and extortion. So Scattered Spider has been in the security news a lot in recent weeks and months. And apparently they use social engineering a lot of times to get in, which this is a matter of conning people in one way, shape, or form. Impersonating bosses to subordinates, or calling and pretending to be tech support. There's all sorts of ways that hackers can use social engineering. But it's a matter of convincing someone to do something that they normally shouldn't do, or to give up information to the wrong person. Kevin Mitnick, who is a famous hacker who was actually jailed for some period of time, now runs a security company, and he claims to have a 100% success penetration rate when he's been tasked with testing companies' defenses, and he claims that the thing that always gets him in is social engineering. Because at the end of the day, people are usually the weakest link. So what can you do about this? Honestly, probably not too much, other than to make sure that you minimize the amount of data that you have out there. If you've got old accounts with somebody, you should ask them to delete your accounts and to delete your data wherever possible. A lot of these companies keep data around even after you've closed accounts or after you've stopped having a relationship with them. So to minimize the chance that they might be doing that, as you stop using a company that might have some of your personal information, it's not a bad idea to put in a formal request and keep records of this, asking them to close your account and delete any of your data. And if possible, it's always kind of nice for them to send you a copy of that data before they delete it, just so you know what they have. All right, now we actually have some good news. This one's from Epic, and this is the Electronic Privacy Information Center, not the game maker. And it's about a new law that was signed by the governor of Vermont. This afternoon, Governor Phil Scott signed the Vermont Age Appropriate Design Code, or AADC, into law. The Vermont AADC protects kids' privacy, enhances kids' autonomy, and ensures their online safety, prohibiting abusive data and design practices. The law will take effect January 1st, 2027. This is a quote from the governor, quote, "As we see more and more kids using technology, I believe most would agree we need to take steps to protect them in a reasonable and responsible way when they're online," unquote. And then this is a quote from one of the bill's sponsors, Representative Monique Priestley. And Monique says, quote, "With the governor's signature, the Age-Appropriate Design Code is officially law in Vermont. This is a big step forward for families across our state. It sends a clear message that we won't let big tech write the rules when it comes to protecting kids online. Our children deserve platforms built with their well-being in mind, not designed to exploit their data. I'm so grateful to the governor, our attorney general, committee leaders, and everyone who worked so hard to make this possible. This was a team effort, and it shows what we can do when we put kids first," unquote. Significant provisions of the Vermont AADC include 1. Requiring covered businesses to configure minors' default privacy settings to the highest level of privacy. 2. Provide minors with the ability to limit unwanted adult contact. 3. Regulating how minors' personal data is used to ensure that personalized feeds are not driven by surveillance data, but instead by minors' express preferences. 4. Requiring companies to be transparent about how they use minors' personal data. 5. Requiring the Attorney General to update rules prohibiting abusive data processing or design practices that lead to compulsive use or subvert or impair user autonomy, decision-making, or choice at least once every 2 years. 6. Requiring the Attorney General to issue rules about how covered businesses can use age assurance technology in a privacy-protective way. And finally, 7. A private right of action that will allow Vermonters to enforce their rights in court. So that's the end of the article. Those are all really great things. And frankly, those are things that we should all have, not just minors. But if that's what it takes to get some of this done, at least we can protect our kids. And by the way, Monique Priestley is somebody that I recently met in Washington, D.C. I think it actually was at the Epic party. And she is a wonderful person, and I will be interviewing her sometime in the near future. So that will be a great one. Next up, this is from 404 Media, and it's a good follow-up on some of the reporting they did about Flock, which was the automated license plate reader company. And this will be a short one. It just says, Flock, the automated license plate reader, or ALPR company, with a presence in thousands of communities across the U.S., has stopped agencies across the country from searching cameras inside Illinois, California, and Virginia, 404 Media has learned. The dramatic moves come after 404 Media revealed local police departments were repeatedly performing lookups around the country on behalf of ICE. A Texas officer searched cameras nationwide for a woman who self-administered an abortion, and lawmakers recently signed a new law in Virginia. Ordinarily, Flock allows agencies to opt into a national lookup database, where agencies in one state can access data collected in another, as long as they also share their own data. This process violates multiple state laws which bar the sharing of ALPR data out of state or it being accessed for immigration or healthcare purposes. The changes also come after a wave of similar coverage in local and state-focused media outlets, with many replicating our reporting to learn more about what agencies are accessing Flock cameras in their communities and for what purpose. The Illinois Secretary of State is investigating whether Illinois police departments broke the law by sharing data with outside agencies for immigration or abortion-related reasons. Some police departments have also shut down the data access after learning it was being used for immigration purposes. And this is a quote from Flock CEO Garrett Langley from a blog post. Quote, some states, like California, do not allow any sharing across state borders. For those states, Flock has disabled national lookup to make compliance easier, unquote. And in that blog post, which was titled Setting the Record Straight, Statement on Flock Network Sharing, Use Cases, and Federal Cooperation, Langley says he is writing to provide transparency on, quote, recent clickbait-driven reporting and social media rumors that mischaracterize Flock's LPR devices, unquote. Rather than refuting any of our reporting, he instead explains that as a result of it, Flock has decided to perform numerous internal audits about how police are using the network that exactly aligns with 404 Media's reporting, and that Flock has decided to make specific changes to how Flock works to ensure that local police are complying with state data sharing laws, which include disabling the National Lookup tool in California. So I think that is good news, and again, this is why reporting like 404 Media is doing, and transparency and exposing what's actually going on can make a real difference, which is why it's important. So I wanted to follow up on that to let you know that this stuff actually does have a good effect. Next, a very quick one here about Windows 10 users who have not yet upgraded to Windows 11. And Microsoft is trying to give you as many ways as possible to get this done. But the main worry here is that because support for Windows 10 is going to end officially at the end of this year, that means you may not get security updates for Windows 10 anymore, which is a real problem. So just a quick snippet from this article from Tech Radar. Windows 10 has been around for almost a decade now, with official support due to end on October 14th of this year. Yet that doesn't have to be the end of the road, as Microsoft has just announced a new process for anyone who needs a little more time to switch to Windows 11. The updates are part of Microsoft's Extended Security Updates, or ESU program, which brings monthly critical and important security patches to Windows 10 users for 1 year after official support ends. Microsoft says this is only meant to be a short-term solution as it doesn't include non-security updates or new features, which, by the way, is just fine. You don't always need that stuff or want that stuff. Anyway, with today's change, there are now a few new ways to get started. For individuals, there's a new enrollment wizard that will give you 3 options. 1. Use Windows Backup to sync all your settings to the cloud. 2. Redeem 1,000 Microsoft Rewards points to get started, whatever that is. Or 3. Pay a one-off fee of $30. After you've picked an option and followed the instructions, your Windows 10 PC will be enrolled. ESU coverage for personal computers lasts from October 15th, 2025 until October 13th of 2026. The enrollment wizard is currently available in the Windows Insider program, made available to regular Windows users in July, and will roll out on a wider basis mid-August. Okay, so I wish, honestly, that Microsoft would do what Apple has done, and that is just give away their software updates to home users. I understand why they might want to charge, enterprise and corporate users for updates, for the big time versions like, Windows Enterprise or Windows Pro. But for Windows Home, they should just give those away. And I guess technically they are right now. You can still get Windows 11 upgrade for free. There is an update checker within Windows 10 that will tell you whether or not your current computer is compatible with Windows 11. And by the way, a lot of those compatibility checks are arbitrary. They're trying to get you to upgrade your computer, which of course would get them an extra, whenever you buy a computer with Windows 11 pre-installed, they're getting some sort of a kickback for that. But they also just want you to be on the latest and greatest. They want to get people off of Windows 10. So if you are not ready to upgrade your computer yet, this option is one you should definitely take to make sure you at least get the security updates for Windows 10. And then that will give you a little more time to figure out what you're going to do because you really should get updated to Windows 11. So you're getting a modern operating system that will get security updates. And that may require new hardware. You may have to get a new computer to get one that's compatible with Windows 11. The upside is if you get a new computer, it will almost surely have Windows 11 pre-installed. Next up, another operating system update, and this is about Android 16 and some really cool security features that are built in. And this is from Android Authority. From harmful apps to insecure connections, there are all kinds of risks you're exposed to. Thankfully, Android features a range of security settings to keep your device and data protected from these threats. To take this protection even further, Google is rolling out an advanced protection mode with Android 16. Today, Android 16 is coming to eligible devices, and this was a couple weeks ago, and with it, advanced protection mode. As Android 16 beta users are aware, this isn't the first time we've seen this feature, but now it's rolling out widely on the stable channel, in other words, for everybody. This feature can be accessed by going to the Settings app, navigating to Personal and Device Safety, and finding the Advanced Protection page. On this page, you'll see a toggle to safeguard your device. Advanced Protection doesn't necessarily add any additional protection, but when it's turned on, it will activate several of Android's highest tier security protocols. This protection covers a range of categories, which include 1. Device safety. This locks down your device if it's stolen or confiscated, and it can block USB data transfers. 2. Apps. Scans for malware, blocks apps from unknown sources, and prevents apps from corrupting device memory. 3. Network. Blocks all unsecured connections, including 2G and WEP. And 2G, by the way, is an older cellular technology, which at least in the US is not available anymore, so that's a little bit moot. And WEP, which is wireless encryption protocol. I forget what it stands for. It's an old Wi-Fi, supposedly secure connection technology that has been hacked and is no longer secure. Anyway, back to the article. However, 2G will still be available for emergency calling only. It also prevents the device from automatically reconnecting to insecure networks. 4. Web. Defends your phone against malicious websites, enforces HTTPS for all website connections on Chrome when possible, and prevents JavaScript from running. That's kind of strange because most websites depend on JavaScript, so I'm not sure if it means all JavaScript or just dangerous JavaScript. Anyway, 5. Calls. There are several safety features here to prevent spam and spam calls from reaching you. And finally, 6. Messaging. Adds extra protection against spam and scams via text message. It's important to note that once advanced protection mode is toggled on, you won't be able to adjust individual security settings until it's toggled off. Seeing as this feature is designed specifically to enable all of Android's highest security settings, it makes sense. Advanced protection is available on devices running Android 16. Now, as is usual with Android, it remains to be seen how quickly it will roll out to non-Google devices like Samsung and other Android operating system smartphones. May take more time before they make Android 16 available. But these are good security features. Honestly, in most cases, I don't know why you wouldn't just turn this on all the time. And by the way, if you own an Apple device, Apple has some similar kind of security features, some that you can turn on individually and some that you need to turn. You could turn on with lockdown mode, which automatically, kind of like this one, does a lot of these things all at once. So if you're curious, just search on Apple iPhone security, and in particular, search on lockdown mode. All right, next up, this is a really interesting story from The Guardian, and thanks to one of the people that follow me on social media who pointed this one out, or I probably would have missed it. It's an interesting proposal from Denmark about how they might want to handle deep fakes or, videos or photos about other people that were faked using AI, usually for nefarious purposes. So let me read this article from The Guardian. The Danish government is to clamp down on the creation and dissemination of AI-generated deepfakes by changing copyright law to ensure that everybody has the right to their own body, facial features, and voice. The Danish government said on Thursday it would strengthen protection against digital imitations of people's identities with what it believes to be the first law of its kind in Europe. Having secured broad cross-party agreement, the Department of Culture plans to submit a proposal to amend the current law for consultation before the summer recess and then submit the amendment in autumn. It defines a deepfake as a very realistic digital representation of a person, including their appearance and voice. The Danish Culture Minister, Jakob Engel-Schmidt, said he hoped the bill before Parliament would send an unequivocal message that everybody had the right to the way they looked and sounded. He told The Guardian, quote, "In the bill, we agree and are sending an unequivocal message that everybody has the right to their own body, their own voice, and their own facial features, which is apparently not how the current law is protecting people against generative AI. Human beings can be run through the digital copy machine and be misused for all sorts of purposes, and I'm not willing to accept that," unquote. The move, which is believed to have the backing of 9 in 10 of the MPs or members of Parliament, comes amid rapidly developing AI technology that has made it easier than ever to create a convincing fake image, video, or sound to mimic the features of another person. The changes to Danish copyright law will, once approved, theoretically give people in Denmark the right to demand that online platforms remove such content if it is shared without consent. It will also cover realistic, digitally generated imitations of an artist's performance without consent. Violation of the proposed rules could result in compensation for those affected. The government said the new rules would not affect parodies and satire, which would still be permitted. And another quote from Engel-Schmidt, quote, "Of course, this is new ground we are breaking, and if the platforms are not complying with that, we are willing to take additional steps," unquote. Other European countries, he hopes, will follow Denmark's lead. He plans to use Denmark's forthcoming EU presidency to share its plans with his European counterparts. If tech platforms do not respond accordingly to the new law, they could be subject to severe fines, he said, and could become a matter for the European Commission. And a final quote, "That is why I believe the tech platforms will take this very seriously indeed," unquote. So that is interesting. Basically, they're giving everybody an inherent copyright to themselves, their likeness, their sound, their face, their voice, their body, and then allowing them to sue if somebody abuses that. I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's at least an interesting idea. All right, 2 more. This one is from Tedium, which I had not heard of, but I knew of tangentially because I'd known about this tool, but they've got a new version of it that is interesting, and I don't think I've mentioned this before. Now, this is an article that actually came out in mid-May, so keep that in mind as you read this. But there's been an update to what they did as a result of this article. Anyway, let me just read this. Earlier this week, Google announced some big changes to its search engine that are, in a word, infuriating. Simply put, Google has started adding AI overviews to many of its search results, which essentially throw pre-processed answers that often do not match the original intent of the search. If you're using Google to actually find websites rather than get answers, it frickin' sucks. Admittedly, though, it's not the first time Google has adulterated its results like a food manufacturer in the 19th century, which was a link to an article about food dyes, so I'm not really sure what they're saying there. But anyway, it says knowledge panels have been around for years. But in the midst of all this, Google quietly added something else to its results, a web filter that presents what Google used to look like a decade ago, no extra junk. While Google made its AI-focused changes known on its biggest stage during its Google I/O event, the web filter was curiously announced on Twitter by search liaison Danny Sullivan, and Danny Sullivan wrote, "We've added this after hearing from some that there are times when they'd prefer to just see links to web pages in their search results, such as if they're looking for longer form text documents using a device with limited internet access, or those who just prefer text-based results shown separately from search features. If you're in that group, enjoy." The results are fascinating. It's essentially Google minus the crap. No parsing of the information in the results, no surfacing metadata like address or link info, no knowledge panels, but also no ads. It looks like the Google we learned to love in the early 2000s, buried under the More menu, like lots of other old things Google once did more to emphasize, like Google Books. Here's a de-Googled Google, or as close to one as you're going to get on the google.com domain. It's such a questionably fascinating idea to offer something like this. And for power searchers like myself, it's likely going to be an amazing tool. But Google's decision to bury it ensures that few people will use it. The company has essentially bet that you'll be better off with a pre-parsed guess produced by its AI engine. It's worth understanding the trade-offs, though. My headline aside, a simplified view does not replace the declining quality of Google's results, largely caused by decades of SEO, or search engine optimization, by website creators. The same overly optimized results are going to be there, like it or not. It is not Google circa 2001. It's a Google circa 2001 presentation of Google circa 2024, a very different site. But if you understand the trade-offs, it can be a great tool. Power users will find it especially helpful when doing deep dives into things. However, is there anything you can do to minimize the pain of having to click the web option buried in a menu every single time? The answer to that question is yes. Google does not make it easy because its URL seems extra loaded with cruft these days, but by adding a URL parameter to your search, in this case, UDM equals 14, you can get directly to the web results in a search. That sounds like extra work until you realize that many browsers allow you to add custom search engines by adding the %s entry as a stand-in for the search term you put in. I use it all the time to create shortcuts to site-specific searches I regularly use. It works great in the case of Google. All right, now this article says more, and it explains how you can implement this custom search engine if you want. And if you're technically inclined and that sounds interesting to you, by all means do it. It's actually can really be kind of fun to set up a custom search engine with built-in parameters that you use every single time if there's things that you constantly do in your searches in order to refine or filter them, for example. But here's the easy button. There are two websites associated with this new UDM filtering thing on Google searches. One is udm14.com, and the other one is a newer one that this article referenced called udm56.com. And in both cases, this is equivalent to searching Google with a search parameter of UDM equals 14 or UDM equals 56. But these two websites, udm14.com and udm56.com, do that for you. So they just give you a search bar, and when you put your search in there, it searches Google and adds those parameters for you, which gives you the much cleaner results. And it turns out there's a whole lot of these UDM codes that do different things. There are UDM codes that only search videos, that only search news, that only give you forums or shopping results or books. There are lots of UDM codes. So if you want to learn more about those, I also put a link in the show notes about other codes and how to use them. But if you really do like Google search results, which really have gotten horrible, but you want to clear out all the cruft that Google keeps throwing at you, if you want a much cleaner set of outputs, check out those two websites. All right, one last article before we get to the tip of the week, and this is from Bruce Schneier, who actually just quotes a different article. But if you're a ChatGPT user, you really ought to check this out. This is really quite fascinating. I'll just read a brief part of this. It says, Simon Willison talks about ChatGPT's new memory dossier feature. In his explanation, he illustrates how the LLM, which is a large language model, or that's kind of the more technical name for some of these quote-unquote AI chatbots, So how much the LLM and the company knows about its users. It's a big quote, but I want you to read it all. And I'm not going to do it all here, but I'm just going to read the first part. It said, here's a prompt you can use to give you a solid idea of what's in that summary. I first saw this shared by Wyatt Walls. And here's the prompt that you give to ChatGPT to have it reveal this report. Please put all text under the following headings into a code block and raw JSON, which is a data file format. Assistant response preferences, notable past conversation topic highlights, helpful user insights, user interaction metadata, complete and verbatim. That's the whole prompt. You put that prompt into ChatGPT. And then back to the article, it says, this will only work if you are on a paid ChatGPT plan and have the reference chat history setting turned on in your preferences. I've shared a lightly redacted copy of the response here, and it's extremely detailed. And that's the part I'm not going to read you now. It's in this article if you want to look at it. But honestly, what I want you to do is if you actually are a paid ChatGPT user, to actually do this yourself and see what your report says. And then back to Bruce, he just wraps up and says, he's right. That's an extraordinary amount of information organized in human understandable ways. Yes, it will occasionally get things wrong, but LLMs are going to open a whole new world of intimate surveillance. So again, if you're not a paid ChatGPT user and you're just curious what this report looks like, you could go to this article from the show notes and you'll see what this guy's report said, which again was pretty amazing and pretty long. Each of those sections that it mentioned there had a lot of stuff in it. But again, if you have been using ChatGPT, you should definitely try this and learn what ChatGPT thinks it knows about you and what it thinks is important about your past conversations. All right, now it's time for a very quick tip of the week. As usual, this was my blog article, so if you want to get the full version, potentially with some links to other information, go to firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com. And of course, if you are already a newsletter subscriber, then this is waiting for you right now in your inbox. But this is something that I think a lot of people aren't quite really aware of. And so I just want to draw your attention to it so you understand that when you're on your mobile phone in particular, you don't always get to use your default web browser, the one that you installed and chose. And perhaps you were doing Firefox Focus or Brave or some other, or DuckDuckGo or some other privacy-focused browser because, hey, I want all my browsing on this device to be as private as possible. And I know that these browsers are better and I can probably have settings that can make them even more private. And you may also be using something like a custom DNS, like I use NextDNS, and I have that profile installed on my phone. So you would hope, if that is installed in your phone, that it would always be used by every app on your phone. That is not always true. So it turns out that there's a loophole in a lot of applications that are installed on smartphones, and this is true on both Android and iOS. And that loophole is that these apps have the ability, and this is provided by Google in the Android development and by Apple in iOS development. They provide a method to do a web view of something, and that uses some sort of a web kit that is built into the operating system. It's basically a browser built into the OS. And what that means, though, is that these apps, when you click on a link in an app, let's say you're in a messaging app and someone sends you a link to something. Let's say you're in an email app and someone sends you a link to something there. Or you could just be in a news reader app. Any app that potentially has a link to outside content, most people probably think, hey, if I click a web link, it's going to launch my browser, the browser of choice, the one I chose, the one I specifically picked. Or if nothing else, at least the one that comes with the operating system, which, you know, if it's on iOS, Safari actually already has a lot of privacy settings built in. But that is not always the case because it's possible for these apps to say, no, I want to use an in-app web browser, one that is bundled with the app, one whose settings specifically are controlled by the app, not by you. So all of your choices for this browser and whatever settings you made for this browser, maybe even some of the system level browser or network settings that you have for privacy, all of that potentially could be ignored. And let's face it, a lot of these apps that are making money off of your data want to keep you in their app as long as possible. By using their in-app browser, they can, because they control that browser, can get a lot more information about you. They can figure out everything you clicked on while in the app. They can figure out how long it took you to read the article, how you scrolled through the article, what you clicked on in that article. All the kinds of things that you're trying to avoid by choosing your own browser where you can have your privacy settings. So certainly companies like Facebook, Twitter, Google's apps, all of them, TikTok, Reddit, Instagram, Discord, a lot of these apps have a built-in web browser, an in-app web browser that is not your chosen web browser. And this is another reason, by the way, if you've noticed that everybody and their brother has an app for something and they are working really hard to get you to use their app instead of going to their website, that's because when you're using their app, they get a lot more of your data. And potentially they are using an in-app web browser so that even when you supposedly should be clicking a link that would take you out of their app, they keep you within their app and look at everything you're doing in that in-app web browser, and potentially doing other things like, they could, since they're controlling what's coming back and they're controlling that browser, they could actually insert their own ads into the web pages you see. They could insert their own tracking technology into the web pages that they're viewing. I've even seen some companies go so far as to say, like, you can't do certain things that you might want to do on their website. They explicitly don't allow you to do them. They force you to install their app to do those things because they really want you to be in their app because they get so much more data from you by using their app. Now, there are legitimate reasons for in-app web browsers. For example, if you're in a messaging app and someone sends you a link, and in your messaging app, it shows you a little thumbnail preview of that web page, that's basically using this same functionality. And some corporate apps, like if your company requires you to install certain apps for security reasons, sometimes they actually have a more secure version of the browser, or that browser that comes inside their app actually allows you to access things you wouldn't be able to get to from your regular web browser. There are some legitimate reasons for having these WebKits and using in-app web browsers. But I'm telling you, a lot of these apps are doing this because it allows them to control your web experience and to get a lot more data from you and not let you use your chosen default web browser and all your privacy settings that go with it. So what can you do about this? Honestly, not much. You really don't have control over this. And I think that actually is the problem. I think that the mobile operating system makers, which is Google for Android and Apple for iOS, should give you in system settings a way to say, if there's ever a link in an app, I want to use my web browser, not theirs. And that could be a global setting or it could be a per app setting, or ideally both. Or, as we've just discussed with these new security modes on Android and iOS, maybe at least when you're in these high security modes, that would be enabled by default. Every time, when you're in lockdown mode or when you're in data protection mode on Android, maybe that is one of the settings that it changes, is every link you click in an app goes to your default web browser, not to an in-app web browser. But really, the only thing that you can do is, I guess, avoid installing apps where you don't absolutely have to. A lot of companies will incentivize you. They have promotions for you to install their app. How many restaurants have you been in where, hey, install our app and we'll give you a free appetizer next time you're at the store, or a $5 credit on your bill, or something ridiculous? Just say no. All these companies trying to get you to install their apps are doing it because they make money off your data in some way, shape, or form, and that they get to control your experience a lot more through their app than if you're using your own web browser, where you may have blockers installed for tracking and ads, custom DNS and other settings like that will help preserve your privacy. They don't like that. They want to have full control. So that is what's behind a lot of them wanting you to install their app on your phone. So there's more information in the article. Again, if you haven't seen it, there's a link in the show notes, or just go to firewallsdon'tstopdragons.com and it'll be the top article. So there you go. There is your news and your tip of the week. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up this week. Thanks for hanging in there. We had a lot to cover. A couple real quick things before we go. I told you I was going to talk about DEF CON and B-Sides. This is what we lovingly refer to as Hacker Summer Camp. It's basically 3 conferences all in 1 week in one place. Kicks off with B-Sides Las Vegas on Monday, August 4th, which goes a couple days. And then in the middle of the week, there's Black Hat, which is much more corporate and a lot more expensive, and I don't go to. And then it wraps up with DEF CON. This year is DEF CON 33, and it goes through the weekend. I will be in Vegas all week for B-Sides and DEF CON, and it looks like I'm going to be doing a book signing, maybe two. I get a 2-hour slot, and I'm not sure if that is one single 2-hour slot, which I kind of hope it's not, or 2 1-hour slots. But I'm still working that out, but I think I'm actually going to be doing a book signing. I'm not really sure how this is going to work yet. It almost sounds like they're just going to give me a table for an hour and let me do everything else myself. I'm not sure. We'll see how this goes. But I've never done that before. So if you're going to be in Las Vegas, and definitely if you're already going to be at DEF CON, you might look for the book signings. It will be in the vendor area. I'm not sure what time yet. I will let you guys know when I know. But that is the plan. Also, if you're going to Hacker Summer Camp, that would be a fantastic place to show off your Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons swag. And did you know that I have merch? You might not, because I almost never talk about it because I am great at marketing. But I got all sorts of stuff with the Firewalls Don't Stop Dragon logo on it. Just go to fdsd.me/merch. And of course, there is a link in the show notes. And if you're there and I happen to see anybody walking around with some of that merch, I will definitely walk up and say hi. I still have 3 of my indie badges from hackerboxes.com, my amulet of entropy. There are still 3 of those left on the planet because Joe, has sold out of them at his site. And at some point, I probably need to do a promotion around that, but I'm not sure if I'm going to put that together this year or not. We'll see. But I do have 3 of those. At some point, if you're interested, I will probably make those available as a promotion at some point. All right, so Merlin's Musings this week. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be talking about just yet. But as always on the news show weeks, my top patrons will get their Merlin's Musings bonus podcast on Thursday morning. And coming up, we've got a lot of great interviews. Again, we're finally going to talk to Andy Liddell from the EdTech Law Center. After that, we'll be talking with Deviant Olaf. And I knew I mispronounced this when I said it earlier. It looks like Ollam, O-L-L-A-M, is how you spell his last name, but it's pronounced Olaf. So my apologies for screwing that up in the past, but hopefully going forward, I will manage to get that correct. Anyway, that was a fantastic interview, and that's coming up for the one with Andy. And I just interviewed Cory Doctorow again, and that interview will be coming up shortly after that. And I've got several more on the books with some really cool people. I don't want to jinx them just yet, but I've got some great interviews coming up. So subscribe, and then you won't miss any of them. Take care, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there today. Stay safe out there. And until next time, as always, don't get caught with your drawbridge down.